Hello, folks. Welcome to Between Awesome and Disaster. This is your host, Will Carey. Thanks for being here as always. I appreciate you being here. This is a fun episode of the show today because my guest on today's episode is my friend Paul Cohen and a fellow member of the sketch group that I work with at the People's Improv Theater, Backdoor Barbecue. Paul Cohen, as if you are a regular listener of the show, he is the first guest to make a three-peat. He's the first three appearance guest on the show, and the reason for that simply is during these very dire times when you are unable to connect with the people closest to you outside and talk about things that aren't the news. Paul Cohen is the perfect person that I want to talk to in this moment because not only is he a good friend of mine in comedy, but he's also a good friend of mine when it comes to the subject of pop punk and alternative rock music. And he reached out to me about wanting to discuss some new albums that were coming out, and I was very excited to do that. And because the silver lining of not being able to leave the house that much, except for the occasional food run or drugstore run, is that I get to listen. I've had a lot of time to listen to a lot of music that I haven't had a chance to. So I personally, if you're looking for stuff to listen to, I've been catching up on Baltimore, Maryland's own All Time Low. I've been listening to going back and listening to all of their stuff because I've really been enjoying the new singles they've been releasing in anticipation of their new album that'll be out on April 3rd. And Paul Cohen is the exact kind of guy that I want to talk to about that. And the other album we'll just be discussing today is You'll Be Fine by the band Hot Mulligan, which their new album, this album I really, really enjoyed. I was very surprised. I knew it would be good, but I was really surprised by how different but familiar it sounded, and I really, really enjoyed it. So Paul and I are going to talk about that as well after we check in with each other, see how each of us are faring social distancing and quarantine. So that's what we're going to talk about with Paul today. If you enjoy this kind of talk, or if you enjoy this podcast and want to share it with others, we're available on Apple, Stitcher, and Spotify, everywhere you get your podcasts. And if you were in a pop punk band in the 2000s, I would love to interview you on my show because I guarantee that I was a fan of yours. So I'm on Twitter at Comic Will Carey, and you can find me on Instagram, WillCarey23 as well. And let's get right into it. Let's talk about cool music with my friend Paul Cohen from Backdoor Barbecue. And now we're doing a remote podcast, Paul Cohen, and you're the first three-peat guest on Between Awesome and Disaster.
Oh, I'm honored. This is fun, and I really appreciate this because I'm very bored. So this is like real human interaction for me.
Yeah, that's kind of how I've been treating the podcast over the last few
uh,
weeks. I have been doing one or two of these a day, Monday through Friday, since I've been
Smart.
since my office has closed. So I'm
Mhm.
still working during the day, but this is my my daily dose of real human interaction.
Yeah, I was in. So I've been sort of self quarantined. So I work from home. I speak to people during the day, but yesterday I went out to CVS to pick up some medications, and there was like this lady in line in front of me, and she was like really concerned about the line. So I was like, "Hey, I think we're doing a great job of keeping 6 feet apart." Um, and she it was like the most human interaction I've had in a
Oh
long
wow.
time.
Yeah, because so you've been isolating for a little bit longer because I think you've got some underlying issues that can make you potentially high risk, right?
Yeah, it's really a lot of the medication I take. They're like immunosuppressive drugs. So they basically think of a light switch, and the light switch turns your immune system off. So coronavirus is a no go for me. I don't want to get it. I don't think anyone wants to get it, but I don't want to get it.
Yeah, I don't think anyone wants to get it. I know one person from the comedy scene who got it. I think he's on the path to recovery now, but it sounds like the flu times 10, and that's like if you recover from it. Um, the other thing,
Yeah, it seems unpredictable too. Like I think people are like, well, it only hurts elderly people and not young people, but a lot of young people have been getting very sick. Like I don't think they have a rhyme or reason on why some people it just really hits harder. It's
exactly.
very somber. It's very somber.
Oh well, this is just kind of. I feel like every podcast
Yeah.
I'm doing like a little quick check in with
Oh,
everyone to
gotcha.
see how
Yeah.
everyone's doing. That's how me and Evan from Into It Over It were like, how are you doing? Are you okay? Or oh,
Yeah.
you guys are probably going to go into quarantine soon. People keep saying it's quarantine, but that's technically we're not technically in quarantine yet. Quarantine would be like if people with guns were keeping us from leaving our apartments.
Yeah. Also, I think like technically real quarantine, like I wouldn't go out to CVS or anything. You're just
Right.
14 days not leaving. I feel like you have to leave sometimes. Like there's gonna be times where you have to go pick up medication or go to the supermarket. But I'm being smart. Will
Excellent.
I hope you're being smart?
Yeah, I'm being very smart. I left I've left the apartment twice in the last 3 days. Both reasons were to go to Dunkin' Donuts, and the Dunkin' Donuts near my apartment now has a table in front of the counter to maintain the 6 feet social distancing protocols. I just New York is as New York, I feel like, is uniquely vulnerable, not just because it's so densely populated or any of the obvious reasons, but New Yorkers are just allergic to being told what to do. Like they,
Oh yeah, we're like little kids. Like I always tell my parents if like I'm 35 and I'm like, guys, if you ever want me to do something, I'm 35. Just don't tell me to do it. I won't do it. Anything you say to do, I will go against it just because.
yeah, exactly. And so, how are you holding up as far as because we were gonna have a backdoor barbecue was gonna have a show on my birthday in April. That's probably not gonna happen. I'm guessing. How are you faring
Yeah.
as a performer, not being able to get on stage right now?
Well, there's some positives to me being a performer, and I do this show, Extremely Serious Wrestling, where I play a dentist, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and anyone who ever thought that was dumb, don't, because I got gloves, baby. I am ready for this thing.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Have you heard
Um,
that like medical dramas are donating prop masks and gloves?
yeah, which is amazing. They should. Well, the gloves are very specific because I know at work they asked us if we had extra masks to donate, but they only wanted specific masks, and mine don't meet the technical criteria.
Right, right.
Because I guess I guess the masks I have are a little more for peace of mind, and they don't like I think the microbes or whatever like the space in the mask the virus is smaller than it, so it really doesn't hurt. But not tough. We had that show canceled. The Backdoor Barbecue show isn't officially canceled, but between me and you, I don't see how that show goes on.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
because
cuz
we would already be in rehearsals and writing the show at this point, and even for myself, just to be safe, like even if they lifted the ban tomorrow, I don't know how much I should be running around. So, you could use this time positively and use it as a vacation and a break and a way to write and take advantage of other stuff. That's how I look at it.
yeah, that's kind of how I'm approaching it as well cuz you and I think are uh fortunate enough that we can isolate and work from home compared to like people in the food service industry and the other essential
Mm.
the essential sectors. I've been really exercising I got Spotify premium so that I could make playlists for the wedding and not have ads. Fingers crossed. That still
Yeah.
happens in May. Um, but I've really been making use of just fine of just like what are some albums I've been meaning to listen to but just didn't want to spend $9 on. I come late to every new music delivery system. Like I was still buying CDs way into when people were downloading on iTunes, and I was still downloading on iTunes way into when people were streaming. So
Yeah,
I'm really
yeah,
late to the game.
yeah. I only started. I use Apple Music. Like I pay like the $10 a month for unlimited. You can download whatever you want. But I only did it like 2 years ago or so because someone was like, "Paul, you realize you're downloading at least $30 worth of stuff a month. That's stupid. Pay 10."
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. The main reason, and we talked about this a little bit the last time, the thing that pushed me over was that I wanted to listen to the Winking Owls new album, and it wasn't in the iTunes store. It was only on Apple Music and Spotify. Or I could order it from Japan and pay a whole lot of extra,
A whole lot, yeah.
which I still might do because I just there's the Japanese releases you get like tons of bonus stuff. So I still might do that eventually, but that's why I got it. I've just been like diving in to everything. That's how I was able to, when I listened to when you were like, "Oh, we got to listen to this new. We should talk about this new stuff today." I was like, "Oh, great! I can check that out morning of, and then talk to Paul in the afternoon."
Yeah, yeah, it's great because the one there's a so working from home is weird for me because I most of what I do is a lot of people to people interaction, but I
Right.
could wear hoodies. I could wear hoodies and just blast pop punk all day long, and it's through my phone. So anytime my phone rings, like my work phone is hooked up to my cell phone, so when my work phone rings, it just rings on my cell. And it just cuts out the music, and I'm like, "Great, this is cool. This is fun."
Yeah, that's kind of how I've been. That's kind of how I've been approaching it because my day is mostly all remote, and I have meetings a couple times a week. But then the other hours are just like, oh, let I haven't listened to I didn't purchase an all time low album since nothing personal, so I should go and listen to all the stuff they put out since then.
Since then, yeah, that's a good idea. Oh, I should pick a day and do like a band introspective like every day. That'd be fun.
Yeah, I think that would be a really cool thing because you could really quickly chart like artistic influences and like the time period that the albums were released. I'm really excited for All Time Low's new album. Like the stuff I've heard, it sounds like it's a slightly different, a more nuanced take on the kind of like pop punk style that they started with, and I'm really excited about it from what I've heard.
Yeah. We've talked about this. I don't love how bands release songs one by one. I know that's just how music is nowadays,
Sure.
but I think they've released 4 songs from the album, and like every one I like more than the next one, which is rare. Like it's usually they put out one and you're like, great, but everyone gets a little better. And it almost and All Time Low is definitely one of those bands for me where they're either knocking the album out of the park or you're like, oh, not your best effort, you know?
Sure.
Um, and I'm like, yeah, this album definitely seems to have that kind of energy because they run a weird line in that they could do more like I forget what the album was, but albums that are a little faster and a little more less produced. Then they could do albums that are super produced. I could just pull up my phone and pull up this stuff actually, which
Yeah.
is probably smarter to do. But
Oh yeah.
um,
Well, just when you said that, the more produced album, because I listened to Last Young Renegade today for the first time. That
yeah,
has incredibly catchy songs, but I feel like that has more of the modern pop influences baked into the songwriting.
yeah, I didn't love it. Like Future Hearts was the same way for me. Like those, even Dirty Work to an extent is a very produced. Like Don't Panic almost goes the other route with it, but when they were at their best, I feel like they were hitting that medium with let's see, Nothing Personal and So Wrong It's Right, where I feel like there was a good mix. This album reminds me of those so far. It
Yeah.
has big energy pops. I'm really excited for it. So far, so good. 4 for 4 for me on the song releases.
Yeah, I would agree completely. The first music video that they released for it, when I watched it, I was making note of what instruments they were playing. I was like, oh, okay, they got the Telecasters with the humbuckers. Oh, and he's playing a 5 string bass. And there's a little bit, sounds like there's some chorus and delay in the bridges. That's like all just like catnip for me. I love that kind of stuff. So I was very, very excited to. There was a real energy, like pop punk energy to the choruses, also, especially of "Sleeping In" has a really like early 2000s
Oh
feel. The chorus
man.
does to me, because I remember, and I think we may have talked about this just after shows before, when I remember seeing All Time Low open for like SR-71 or play at the Record Theater in Towson or play in like the Commons area at Towson University before they were signed, like when they were still a small band on like Emerald Moon Records, which is like a local independent label in Baltimore.
That's so cool.
And
Yeah.
then they got signed to Hopeless. We're like, and me and all my friends were like, holy shit, a band from Baltimore got signed to like a cool punk rock label. And when I remember one year going to Warp Tour, and it was obviously it was the show where they won to play a 40-minute set instead of a 30-minute set, and
Hmm.
everyone was just like, it was right before like the EP had done very well, and then So Wrong It's Right was like getting ready to come out, so we were hearing like Let It Roll and Dear Maria for like the first time before the album
Ooh.
came out, and it was just such an exciting time. It felt like we were all making it in some weird way. It was really cool.
That's like the wow, you said that really well. And now I just have Let It Roll stuck in my head. I hope like I don't know. I hope they still play that live. I don't know.
I don't know.
Probably not.
I'm trying to remember if the last time I saw them was, and again, another cool thing, I saw them when they were on tour with Blink and A Day to Remember, and I know they played 6 Feet Under the Stars, which is one of my other favorite songs from
Mhm.
So Wrong It's Right. Uh, but again, so crazy to see again a band that I saw play in like the Commons area at my college is now at the Barclays Center. It was amazing, dude.
Wild, wild, and it's crazy for me because first off, their live shows are always fun, and
Yeah.
but just to think that there were two bands going on after them too, like that's how you know you have a good bill.
Oh, totally. And A Day to Remember, I had never really listened to before, but I've really gotten into them. I just downloaded Common Courtesy, I think is their album. It has,
Oh God, that's a good. Is that like City of Okana on it? I
yeah,
think, or
yeah,
oh,
that's that one. The video for that, I love how they're just like, oh, this is the VFW hall where we used to rent to play shows. Loved that album. It was so
yeah,
good.
that's a fun one, man. Right back at it again. That's a
Uh
good album. I like it.
Oh, so good. I'm curious because I know we like are basically on the same wave musically. I'd always wondered if like A Day to Remember would be too heavy for you, or how like the heaviest stuff you listen to.
It's probably on the heavier side, I would say, but uh, I think a lot of it comes down to like the singers for me. The singers will be what tips the scale, not the heaviness of the music.
Hmm.
So, like, I love like the singer from Day to Remember, especially on a lot of their stuff, feels like a lot of ways like a lot more traditional pop punk singer. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
And so, like, I always really dig that. So, like, the heavier stuff is just fun. Kind of kind of like when I was a really huge fan of like Set Your Goals and 4 Year Strong, and those were all
yeah,
much
yeah.
heavier bands, but the vocals were always a little more on the poppy side. But even like do you ever hear of like Chunk No Captain Chunk? um
Yes, they covered "We Are Who We Are" by Kesha, and they have that "Hey Dudes, Are You Ready To" song. They were from France, I believe.
yeah, and they did the cover of All Star that we'd always play before backdoor barbecue shows.
Yes, yes, they
So
did.
like it was a heavy band, but like you get those vocals in like that, I'm way more than into it. I think sometimes when it's just there was that time of like period of time where it's like a lot of the just screamo bands were coming out, and there really
Yeah,
were no good vocals and stuff. That just turned me off. Like it could have been the same music, but you could have put a good singer over it, and I might have liked it.
yeah. I agree with you. I was always kind of not. I was never really grabbed by most screamo from the early 2000s, like a Treyu. I never really got into, or Poison the Well. I never really got into. Um, But I remember liking the Used. I liked those first two records, like because I liked the vocals on that. But yeah, that typical like rah, rah, blah, blah, or the like I'm gonna
That was good. You should be the lead singer of a screamo band.
I could. I'm 20 years behind the thing. I will say though, I was just listening to "Artist in the Ambulance" by Thrice. Dustin, he can actually sing. He. I don't think he had the typical screamo vocalist sound.
No, I don't think he did, but I was never a huge Thrice guy. I never was that big on them. But the Used, I used to love. The Used is definitely one of those bands that I feel like is one of the more underrated bands of that time period. Because they were solid on every front. Like every every member was musically at the top of their game. Their songwriting was good. They were crazy good live. If you go back and listen to their albums, they're really good, like really good. And they could do really hard songs, really poppy, more radio type songs, and then really like emo, like put it on. You're having a bad day, and you throw it on, and you just commiserate with yourself, kind of emo songs.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope, and I'd been trying to connect the dots on Twitter that uh, they're going to be the openers on My Chemical Romance's tour, if My Chemical Romance's tour still happens in the fall. Um,
Yeah, well, I think things. Hopefully, things are starting to be better about the fall. Don't even say that, Will.
I know. I'm optimistic. But yeah, you mentioned 4 Year Strong. I like them and maybe not Strung Out, but I always kind of put them together. 4 Year Strong, I would always the same way when I was getting into punk, and I would be like, "Oh man, Blink are my favorite punk band ever," and then people would be like, "Blink are like." Blink are good, but if you want to listen to like great punk, you should listen to "And Out Come the Wolves" by Rancid or something like that. So, for me, that would be if you love Newfound Glory and like easy core, like if you like pop punk with breakdowns, 4 Year Strong is what you'll get into next because I love them and their new stuff I think is great.
Their new album is really good. As my friend pointed out, he goes, "It shreds." That
Oh,
was his comment.
it totally does because it is both very poppy but also heavy at the same time, and the lyrics are my favorite kind of lyrics because it's punk rock for people who've lived, you know, like
It's Oh, sorry, man, you broke up for a second there.
oh, it's okay. I was saying that the lyrics of 4 Year Strong are like are like pop punk lyrics for people who have lived a bit. Like Learn to Love the Lie. If you really like break down that song, there's a lot going on there.
Oh yeah, that's one of my favorite on the album.
Hmm.
Obviously, it's a very poppy one.
Yeah, yeah.
That yeah, I was kind of surprised when the album came out. I loved their early stuff, like loved their first album. I think it's Rise or Die Trying.
Hmm.
Is I mean, if you ever listen to that one back, you're like, oof, this is front to back amazing. And then, but over time, I like them, but like never as like I felt like each album kind of I didn't like as much anymore. And this album was kind of like more of a return to form for me, or maybe just really good songwriting in there. I don't know. I was almost surprised I liked it so much. You know, I was like, oh, cool, new 4 Year Strong. I'm obviously gonna listen. And
Uh-huh.
then I was commuting a lot. I think I was going back and forth to my parents a lot to go see my grandma, and so I did it like a whole bunch of times. And I feel like I listened to that album on repeat every time,
Hmm.
like sitting on trains and stuff. And yeah, I was just gravitate to it. Like I was like, what am I gonna listen to now? The same album I just listened to, 4 Year Strong.
Uh-huh. Yeah, they have great songs for like staring out of train windows. Them and the Wonder Years have great like staring at passing landscapes kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I think it's. I have a bold prediction. Well, I think 2020 is going to be one of the best release years for this kind of genre in a long time.
oh
I
yeah,
think everyone under the sun is their album comes out this year.
I think so. Like, what else is so All Time Low? Are their new album is out April 3rd. 4 Year Strong just put out a new record. Newfound Glory have a new record coming out. What else is on the calendar for this year?
All right. Well, now that you say that, I gotta look it up. Well,
Sure.
I think it's stage. Does Stage Champs have a new album coming out this year? I
well,
think so.
well, we talked about like really, really loving that single that they did with Simple Plan. So I imagine every time like a single comes out, cause Neck Deep just put out another really catchy song that has
Yeah. So Neck Deep's got an album coming out.
yeah, lots of great pop punk in England right now. In England right now, WSTR, Neck Deep, um, was it Moose Jaw? I think. Yeah, I think Moose Jaw was another one that kind of got
Moose
me.
Blood, Moose Blood, Moose
That's
Blood.
it. That's
I
it.
love
Thank
that
you.
you love. I think WSTR. I say Waster, but I don't really know if that's right. I think they have an album coming out this year.
Oh no way.
I think
Oh,
we'll see. Now that I made that comment, I was like, I really should have looked everything
oh, it's
up
it's totally
more.
cool. This is kind of what we do. Like, I've said this before, but when people listen to you on the show, they just the the feedback I overwhelmingly get is like, you guys sound like you really love what you're talking about. I'm like, we do. Um, Another band I discovered on TikTok, actually, just from like some silly video a kid made, was this group Boys of Fall. They're kind of like a poppier A Day to Remember. You might get
Oh,
into
A
it.
Day to Remember, I think has an album coming out this year.
Yep.
Broadside, I think has an album coming out this year. I'm now I pulled it up. Now I'm doing my research. 4 Year Strong already had an album out. I think Green Day has an album coming out this year. They're a
Oh,
little hit or miss for me at
oh yeah.
times.
It did come out. The Father of All Motherfuckers. That one.
I guess it's already out.
Yeah, I think it
Oh,
came out.
Mayday Parade has an album coming out this year. A lot.
I'm curious what you thought of the new Green Day album. What did you think?
I didn't listen. I didn't listen. I thought it was coming out later this year.
Oh,
So
it's really it, it's different sounding. Like it has a lot of and I might be, and a lot of people might disagree with me on this. Like I would say half the first half has a lot of songs that sound like they're very influenced by the Black Keys. Oddly enough, it's like lots of bluesy kind of stuff, like more what I would call like good old fashioned rock and roll influenced, which I feel like Green Day
sure.
started kind of flirting with a little bit over the last few years. And the second half feels more like a traditional Green Day album, but the album is only like 26 minutes long, so it goes through really quickly.
I like that they did that because I feel like didn't their albums start to get very long? Almost like concept album kind of based.
Well,
Just put out a short rock album. That's all we need, man.
yeah, I kind of because that's what rap does now. Rap has figured out how to capitalize on streaming in the most economical way, because rap now is like 2 minute long songs that are just like all hook, and then you move on to the next one. I was gonna
So it's turning into pop punk.
I think so, because I think lots of, and if you look at some of what the rappers that they call emo rap now, if they were born like 10 years before, they look like they would be in hardcore or punk bands. Like they have all the tattoos and the neck tattoos and stuff. So they must have grown up. I feel like these kids probably grew up listening to this pop punk, and they were listening to hip hop. And then when they wanted to start making music, uh, maybe it was easier to have to do guitars over drum machines or 808s than it was to find a drummer or get record drums in your bedroom.
It definitely is by a long shot. Man, good drummers are hard to find.
Oh my, yeah, and I feel like especially in New York, I feel like maybe in Staten Island you could maybe get lucky because it's more suburban. You could like have drums in the garage until a certain hour, but like trying to
Yeah.
drum in an apartment. There's someone in my apartment building that someone their kid drums, and sometimes I can hear him even though he has an electronic drums. That never bothers me, but I'm the coolest person in this complex.
Yeah, I do have a feeling that like I would expect it not to bother you given everything I know about you, but other residents, maybe not.
Yeah,
It's tough. Like my buddy was who was a drummer, like the drums were in the basement. They also like tried to as best they could like insulate the sound down there. Um but if you were like his next door neighbor, you heard it like 100%. Or if you were the one in the other side of the attached house, like
sure.
that your house is vibrating, like no questions asked. But I always think like when you're living on top of people in the city, it's hard, you know. People do it, I'm sure, but it's you're not going to find as many people who drum.
Yeah. Well, the great the and because you're forced to either get like a rehearsal studio, because that's how my band does it. We have like a rehearsal studio. It costs us like maybe $40 for 2 hours, and they have drums and amps in there, so we just have to bring our instruments, and so we
Did you
go in
go
there.
to Astoria Soundworks by any chance?
We've talked about it, but we haven't gone there yet. We usually go to
Okay,
Red Note Studios in Bushwick, which is very
okay.
close for my bandmates, but not close for me at all.
That's
Uh,
far for you. I just find it funny because I've used Astoria Soundworks. Yeah, I used to use it way, back in the day, 21, 22.
uh
But
huh.
I recorded there last year, and I was like, wow, this is so fun. I'm still going to this place in Queens.
You recorded there last year. What did you record there last year?
It was, and don't worry, guys. I'm getting a lot of questions about it. The delay is going to be released because we pushed back the tax date. But it was the tax song I did with Lily Giannoni from the Backdoor Barbecue Show. We like recorded it live with video there.
Uh huh.
Um, but also I had gone there a couple times just to like jam with my with a buddy of mine, who we were like fooling around with doing something more, and
Uh huh.
nothing much more came of it. But it was like, man, now I've gone to this studio. It felt for a while like I was regularly back going, which was fun because it made me feel young again. Lil.
I know. I love going into a rehearsal space or a studio, just putting on headphones. Like the voiceover stuff I've done this year has been such a thrill to just have headphones on and speak into a microphone. I mean, it's fun doing it in here, but like when you have like a studio and glass and stuff, it's really really awesome. And even like the really quick couple of hours, my band was in a studio to just bang out a live in studio recording of a few songs. It was amazing. Just that it brought me back to that rush of like first getting like a band together and like figuring out the songs, and then being excited to share them with people.
That's all. Yeah. Oh man, I would love to go into a studio again. It's kind of cool. Like I've done a lot of film stuff.
Uh huh.
Can I give a quick plug?
Of course.
Everyone go online and watch the Gronies or Goonies too. We did a sequel short with the people from Super Crazy Fun Time,
Mm-hmm.
and I was really excited because I saw Chunk in it, but someone tweeted out to Jeff Cohen who played Chunk in the original, and he retweeted it out. So I'm like, "Yo, Chunk saw me play Chunk, baby," and his last name is Cohen. Um,
That's awesome,
but
man.
with when you film stuff, it takes so long to get edited. Like it's not a quick turnaround, but studio for music is quick turnaround. So you have that rush of creativity, and you see the output pretty quickly. You know,
Yeah, definitely. I
it's not like
agree.
you're doing 1,000 take, always take made it. Like, well, we know what take is making it because we're listening to the master track.
Yeah, I'd always felt that way because I at this point in my career, I feel like I've done just about everything. I've done voiceover, I've done on camera acting, I've done uh, music. I've been in music production. I've done stand up. I've done sketch. I've done improv, and they all are very satisfying in their own unique ways. But like specifically like filming stuff either for sketches or for uh, feature films is it's just such a because you're like in the lab for so long tinkering on the
Mhm.
thing before you get to show it to anybody. And I
It
think,
is so cool. We used to go away and record at different places, and so and we would be there for like a couple days or 4 or 5 days, and it was like this experience because like for 4 or 5 days, that's all you were doing. You were holed up with everyone with the band, and you were just going to the same place every day, and it was really cool to start from like day one to day five to see just what happened.
mm-hmm. Would you ever play in a band again now, or do you think those days are behind you?
Hmm. I think it'd have to be the right fit. See, like on paper, it's like, yeah, it'd be awesome from everything we just said. But it have to be the right thing. Like being in a band is a big commitment, and I wouldn't want it to ever feel like a chore. I really love doing acoustic stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but a fun part about that is it's either myself or I pull in another singer, and it's a little more like the lo-fi-ness of it really excites me a bit more, because uh, like I know like your band started to play shows and everything, but I'm like no, I really like the idea of like just being able to show up with an acoustic guitar and go from there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Something about that is sort of more exciting to me. It's more appealing to me from a practicality standpoint too. Yeah, would it be fun to be in a band? Yeah, but would I like doing it, putting up with all the other stuff, not just the time in the studio or when you're in front of an audience? I don't know, man. It had to be a right fit with the right people.
Yeah, that's exactly the thing, and yeah, that's exactly it because it's bands are like marriages in a weird way. You spend a lot of time with these people, and if it's unpleasant, then the whole experience is unpleasant.
Yeah, and like I know you, like you said, you're in Bushwick to rehearse. Like that's a big commitment to say, like, yeah, we're gonna go here and do it. So I don't know. I guess the answer is maybe.
Mm-hmm.
If I had to make a short story long, that would be my answer.
Yeah, I think it works for us because while we all like the music we're doing, so that's number one. We all like each other, and we all have our other things as well. So I don't feel like we're all kind of like uh, our creativity is diversified. Like we're not depending on anyone. I'm not depending on any one thing. And the because the attraction to me for podcasting originally was something creative I can make and edit quickly and get out into the world. So I'm scratching that itch. Um, Speaking of, we were talking about A Day to Remember. Their new song, one of their new singles, Resentment, I really love the video for because they're basically playing in a giant forest fire.
Ooh, I don't know if I have that.
That's
See, I'm gonna
probably,
learn stuff. I had that. I did the song "Degenerates" was one of the singles, I think.
yes, yes, it is.
So I did. I like that song, but I haven't downloaded it anymore. See, I'm writing down on a pad next to me what I should download. So
Uh huh.
I'm gonna put "A Day to Remember."
Well, I thank you so much for turning. I had no idea that Hot Mulligan had a new album coming out, and I really really enjoyed that. Let's talk about that a little bit because Ken told me about them, and I got their album before this.
Pilot. Yeah, Kent told me about them too.
And where are they from? They're from.
Michigan. I did like very, very light research at 5 minutes too. So they're from Michigan, and this is their second um album they put out,
Uh huh. And this is
or
like,
full length.
and this feel like, honestly, and I might be naive saying this, I don't know if I've heard a pop punk band take this approach before because their new album, which is called "You'll Be Fine," it's almost sounds like they walked into a Def Cab for Cutie or Say Anything session and took all of the like Fender Princeton reverb amps and all of the single coil guitars and
Hmm.
played like shouty pop punk through that. It's really really cool sounding, and I really have never heard any. I've never heard pop punk songs with this production before.
Yeah, I remember like I liked their first album, but by no means do I want to say like I loved that album Pilot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And so I downloaded this album. Well, I think I had downloaded the first two singles first, "Feel Like Crab" and "Equip Sunglasses."
Uh-huh.
And I was like, oh wow, this is like really good. Like I found myself just I make playlists a lot, like once a month maybe, and it'll just have like all the new single releases in there.
Mhm.
And normally what happens is towards the end of the month, I'm like, all right, time for a new playlist because I've just been listening to the same 8 songs and I'm wearing them out. And I feel like what I did is when I made the next month playlist, I put those songs back on, which is kind of unusual for me. I'm usually like played out of it.
Yeah.
But I'm like, no. First off, this album has insane replay value. Um, but I remember being like, oh wow, like these guys were good, but like this doesn't really, this sounds like much different. And I'm not always the biggest fans of when I feel like a band matures and it feels forced, but this does not feel forced. This just feels like a very natural. This is the next step.
Mhm.
And yeah,
Totally.
you're right. I think it's so good. And it's I had well, and now this is up in the air, but I had my fantasy baseball draft. And they all make fun of me. They're all a couple of years older than me,
Mhm.
but they're always like play Newfound Glory, you know. One year I had a bet with the guy who ran the league that I think it was like I had Brian McCann on my team. He was a catcher, and if
Uh-huh.
he hit like 40, I think it was him. I don't remember. Maybe it wasn't just. I don't remember if he's that player, but it was that guy hit 40 or more home runs. That guy would come with me to a Newfound Glory show. Um, but my point is like these are people who are like, you're still a kid, you listen to this, and I just had this music in the background, and someone was like, "Oh man, great new choice for the day," and I was like, "What? These are the people who make fun of me nonstop."
Yeah, I
Um,
yeah, every time I tell someone I love pop punk or Blink 182, they're like, "Still?" I'm like, "Yeah."
I'm always like, "What do you like?" And then they're always like I had someone be like, "Oh, like I'm going to see, oh, I'm drawing a huge blank, Billy Joel, right?"
Uh-huh.
And I was just like, whoa, whoa, whoa. So you've been listening to this Billy Joel since you were 2 and you still go to Billy Joel concerts and that's fine. But me who found this band in my formidable years, that's the weird one.
Exactly. And I think Billy Joel has great songs. Um but that's not like a crazy out of the box choice, if that makes sense.
Most people don't really, I've noticed, they don't really have crazy out about. The people who will judge you are the people who listen to, they're like, who are your favorite artists? And they're like, easy. Billy Joel, the Beatles, and David Bowie, it'll be
Mhm.
like the same 10 artists that you could pick out over and over and over. They're the people who get on me for pop punk.
Yeah.
Anyone who has a little more of an eclectic taste or something is like, oh, cool.
Yeah, exactly. I really don't I don't get I don't it I think it's because that was what the kids were listening to when they were like our age, and but I'm not that way with what the kids are into nowadays. If you tell me like, "Oh, the pop punk kids are making rap now." I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's got to be interesting sounding. I'll go check that out." Um
Yeah,
or,
I'm like, sign me up. Where can I hear that?
Exactly. Oh, like the metal guys make rap now and scream over really intense bass and drum beats. Okay, I'll check that out. That was somebody I was thinking. Someone really set up for COVID-19 is the rapper Scarlord. Do you know him?
I don't. Well, I'm gonna write it down.
Yeah.
Tell me more. Go into it.
So he's a rapper from England, and he a lot of his like state. I don't want to call it a costume, but I'm lacking a lot of his like gimmick is very anime and culture and Japanese culture
Yeah.
inspired. And when he raps, he wears like a surgical mask with like a scary monster mouth on it. And you can buy those on his website. So it's like Scarlord is gonna make bank right
Oh,
now.
that's smart. Would that fall in the same camp as like kind of the scene that like MC Lars is in? I guess.
uh
Or
oh
sort of, or they sort of crossover.
they're in the same. I would say they're cousins. Nerdcore I think is a little bit friendlier. Scarlord would be considered. I've heard him called like trap metal, because
Okay.
because trap music is like has that really like booming bass and like uh but he's kind of like shouting, screaming over these really heavy beats.
Hmm.
So I would put them. I would say their nerdcore is like the friendlier version of this subgenre of rap, whereas trap metal I would say is like the scarier gothy cousin. But I'm probably getting. I might
But
be
they're still in the same family.
exactly. Speaking of Newfound Glory, their two new songs I can't wait to hear. It looks like it feels like every other album. They'll do an album that like incorporates a lot of some outside influences, but then they will cut a everything you they will cut a straight up pop punk album, and I feel like at least from these first two songs, this is what they're going for on the next record.
Yeah, especially like the greatest of all time. Like I love that it starts with that kind of faster drum.
Uh huh.
And I grew up and I love basketball. I gotta say, I'm big Knicks fan, so I always uh, everyone's like, man, I love Michael Jordan. I'm like, I don't love Michael Jordan. I respect him, but I don't love him. And but it was cool that they had that kind of greatest of all time nod to those '90s Bulls teams. Which is funny because I showed it to my friend who primarily listens to hip hop, but I like drip on him.
Sure.
And he didn't even catch. He's a huge basketball guy, and he didn't pick that up. I'm like, dude, go back and listen. They're referencing like Jordan, Pippen, and Rodman.
Yeah, I was. I like every little kid. I was a huge. I loved the Michael Jordan and the Bulls and Space Jam. Um, um,
Well, you know what? There's a big difference between me rooting for the Toon Squad to beat the Monstars and the Bulls to beat the Knicks. Like huge difference. I mean, one was for like the fate of the world, I think, or Toon World or something.
well, yeah, they were gonna enslave all the Looney Tunes. Um, but yeah, Michael Jordan, and well, so I was like, I didn't have like a hometown team to really root for. The closest was, I guess, would be the Washington Bullets. But
Yeah.
I was a kid and didn't know better, so I was like, I like Michael Jordan and Brett Favre and King Griffey Jr. I was like, who's the biggest star? I like them.
Well, given because there were no, well, I guess the Wizards are the closest. I'm trying to think. Yeah, because so a lot of those guys in the baseball league, it's mostly based out of Maryland.
Out of Maryland, yeah,
Yeah, so they're like Orioles, Ravens, and I think a lot of them for the Wizards because it's closer. But I don't, I definitely don't get the sense that they have like the same attachment to, um, like them as they do the Orioles or the Ravens. Probably because you can go see them in person.
yeah, and specific and those teams in Baltimore. So if you live in Baltimore, you'll love those teams. But I where I was from was technically considered a suburb of DC, so they most people defaulted to the Redskins or maybe the Nationals, but it was mostly a lot of NFL where I was growing up.
Guys, can I just make a comment on how are they still named the Redskins?
You know, I talked about this with a friend of mine with another comic on the podcast called named Chris Calgero. Um, about the Redskins, and even if they changed the name, people would still call them the Redskins because there's a hockey team in North Dakota uh, that are now called the North Dakota Fighting Hawks. They were originally called the North Dakota Fighting Sioux after the Sioux Indian tribe,
Yeah.
and they refused to change their name for years. And the only reason they did is because the NCAA said we will strip you of your Division One status if you don't change your name. But if and yeah, they're technically the Fighting Hawks. But I went and saw them uh, play Boston College because Chelsea's dad is a big Boston College fan, and you saw tons of the Fighting Sioux, and they all did that tomahawk chop thing that you see at FSU games.
Oh,
So
I hate that. I hate that chop.
it's really
But like, I
corny.
think G.
I think I might have had you frozen for a second there, but I'm gonna vamp until you come back because I think I can get you to come back, or maybe
But
not.
it's been like 20 years at this point. And I just don't think you hear people say red men anymore.
Yeah, you froze for a second there, but if I'm picking up what you were saying, uh, yes, I don't think there are lots of phrases you hear for Native Americans that are way outdated outdated
Oh,
now.
yeah. If I broke up, my point was that St. John's did change their name 20 years ago, and I don't think you hear people say the old name anymore because you have now have 20 years new students coming in that are used to something else.
Exactly. It's a generational thing. Like we'll by the time we're in our 70s, that's when people will start calling it the RFK bridge, you know?
Maybe that's generous. I don't know. Um, yeah, well, I still think if they change the name that way, anyone being born now would not associate that with them.
Definitely not. Well, there's like comedians that are known for being like super progressive that are from like Ohio and are big Cleveland Indians fans, and there's real like because you're born and have all these great memories of of watching them play baseball, and then you're like, the Indians, why? So I feel like that'll take some time, but eventually that will start to shift because soccer is already doing this because soccer teams are not named after like Native American tribes or like animals or like crazy like tough sounding names. Most soccer teams are just wherever the team is located, and then football club
Mhm.
or soccer club or United.
Maybe they're onto something here. Although I like the weird names. Some make sense, some don't. But I don't know. I think they're fun. I just maybe there's a couple we should revisit.
I think so. Um, what is do you now now this might be kind of an odd question to answer given that the live music business is on pause right now. Uh, any shows that you're really looking forward to this year? Because one, I know some of the things we talk about uh, are what albums are coming out. What shows are we looking forward to this year, Paul?
All right. So the show that I'm most looking forward to, and I really hope it doesn't get canceled, is the Newfound Glory Simple Plan tour.
Yeah.
Um, One big reason why I'm really excited to see it, it's in like my favorite outdoor venue. It's whatchamacallit, it's like Pier 17 in New York. It is on the top of the South Street Seaport, on the top of a building. It looks like the Brooklyn Bridge in the background.
Oh
It's
wow.
gorgeous. It's gorgeous there at night. It's rooftop. It's not too packed either, and you use a good spot to see from anywhere. And then just that, and that feels like a really like a throwback tour to have, NFG and Simple Plan together. That's one I'm really excited for.
Yeah. Did you get tickets for that? Because tickets sold out by the time I tried to grab them. That's awesome, man. I know that venue. I've always wanted to see something there. I'm still holding out my. I was able to get one ticket for My Chemical Romance's tour for their second New Jersey show, because there was a huge kerfuffle around Ticketmaster and the queue times, and then the prices immediately getting jacked up. But I was able to get one for pretty much at the asking price. So I am really excited to see them because I've seen that I saw them on each tour they did, saw them on Three Cheers for Sweet Revenge, saw them on as the Black Parade, and I saw them with Blink as the Killjoys. So I'm very excited to.
That yeah, that's gonna be cool. And that I would assume just because uh, they haven't played in a while, I can imagine the audience is probably gonna be nuts.
Oh yeah, I found some videos from their reunion show they did in Los Angeles from the very first song. They opened with "I'm Not Okay," and before the show started, they played the audio from the video of them like going, "You like D&D, Audrey Hepburn, Fangoria," and people were shouting along to it. And then the curtain drops
Oh,
right as
that's so cool.
it was. Oh my god, I'm gonna cry probably. I'm gonna be so excited.
All right, I'm gonna get you pumped because there's a summer festival because you don't really get Warped Tour anymore, but there's a summer festival, and I think you're gonna be pumped when I read this lineup to you.
Okay.
Right? All Time Low, The Story So Far, The Main, Movements. I don't know them. Yours truly, and Grayscale.
That is an incredible lineup.
I don't know Movements. I'm gonna write them down as something
Yeah.
else I should try.
Yeah, I'll write them down as well because yeah, but yeah, everything else in that I love. Um, where is that show taking place?
Oh, I don't know. I should look it up. I think it's also at Pier 17, but there's a good shot I'm just making that up. Um,
That because that sounds like an incredible lineup. Oh, if only Stand Atlantic were on that show, that would just be everything, every band I love right now. Just
it's gonna be at Pier 17, the end of July, and Stone Pony Summer Stage in Asbury Park.
that's another great place to see a show. New Jersey outdoor concerts are my favorite kind of concerts.
Yeah, I went to Warped the one-off Warped Tour show in New Jersey last year, and it was awesome.
Oh, that's great, man.
It was on the beach, so maybe there were some aspects of it that weren't that cool. The beach does not seem like the best place for a concert, but you could watch from the side. But that was cool. Like, cause I kind of miss not. I don't know how much I'd go to Warped Tour now anyway. It's the older you get, that's like a really marathon show. Like that
I,
one is physically brutal to get through.
I agree.
But
Music festivals.
so I need those smaller festivals that are just like two stages and not 3 p.m. to night instead of like noon forward.
Yeah, I agree because my last Warp Tour it became less about I was wearing like all white clothes and I was drinking water constantly. All of my money went towards buying bottled water because and it was like maybe
Yeah, it's like it's just drinking water. It's like, and then if there's, you're always running around too, because it's like you get there and you write out your schedule and you're like, all right, I got to see this band at this stage and this band on this stage and it's like grueling, dude.
oh yeah, and then the like Faustine bargains people are making like, oh no, two bands I like, they're playing at the same time on opposite ends of the festival. What will I do?
Well, when I was younger, I'd be like, I'm obviously running over. And then when I'm older, I'm like, all right, let's make the smart decision. Who could we see in the fall? Or do we really want to do this? Who do we want to catch the full set of?
Ex-
I was more ambitious when I was 22 over 35.
exactly, because sometimes you'd like have to wait longer so you could get closer for like, okay, I'm gonna sit through this band who I'm not stoked on, but I'll get closer so that the next band on the stage is one I really want to see, so I'll be up front. Uh,
Oh, you know me. I'm not getting in pits anymore. I'm not getting down there. No way.
that's what I used to
Yeah.
do. Although I did when I saw Motion City Soundtrack at Webster Hall, I got in the pit and we were all jumping up and down and having a great time. There was a very noticeable like section of like the partners of the people who were moshing, who standing off to the side. It was sort of um, like I remember laughing at the concept of reverse daycare at Warp Tour when they had like air conditioned tents for parents in movies. But now I was like, if my kid is into wanting to go to big summer festivals, I'll probably hit that up
uh,
if I am not into the band.
oh, the reverse daycare was, I mean, it probably came out at its height. It probably was 15 years ago at this point, but that was so smart. I thought that was like the most genius thing.
It
Such
was
a small thing, but
it was a really smart idea. One thing I would love to close this out on because you and I have talked about doing our Drive Through Records retrospective podcast. What is if you had to pick one or two albums from the glory years of Drive Through Records
uh,
that you'll still put on? What are they?
whew, there's so many. Um,
I'll start with
hmm.
mine if it helps. For me,
All right. Well, well, I'll go first because it might be yours.
okay, okay, go ahead.
Well, so I recently I know it's because of you. I'll be honest, because listening to your podcast, but I had thrown on and this was before they did the re-release, but I've been throwing on Last Stop Suburbia
Yep, that's what I was
a
gonna
whole
say.
lot. That because that to me was I feel like there was like that probably the starting line, Say It Like You Mean It, and the drive through always had really amazing EPs, and the
Mm-hmm.
movie Life Has a Gambling Problem are three that really stick out as like, oh, like, whoa, I love those. Like I could remember the place I bought them or times I listened to them or who I was with, and those three kind of stick out a lot to me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I still remember, and it was so cool getting to tell Tim to well over the phone that I got Last Stop Suburbia at Kmart. I was like, oh, what's this? And then I flipped it over. It was like, oh, it's got that yellow arrow. I'll probably like this. And then it's just still like one of my favorite records. Say It Like You Mean It. Also, um, I know that Kenny. I think he's kind of grown past that style of music now in what
They
he's
they
doing with
they,
the
they still play. They still play. I have a buddy who knows the band, and I wasn't home, but he like hit me up like, "Hey, an extra ticket." He hit me up an hour before the show, so it's
uh-huh.
you know. But he had I fell into an extra ticket for the starting line for like 4 months ago or something.
Oh, that's awesome, dude. Yeah, the last time I saw them, I think they did Say Like You Mean It front to back. Um, and that was also what I was gonna say. Islands by Starting Line. When I was listening to You'll Be Fine by Hot Mulligan, it made me think of no, not Islands, Direction. That was the actual name of the album. It kind of
Yeah,
reminded me of that Starting Line album for some reason. Not in like it sounds exactly the same, but the spirit of those two albums I feel like is not too far off.
yeah. I feel like I was like, let's have a podcast to talk an hour about Hot Mulligan, and I feel like I kept veering off, so my apologies. But I kind of want to reiterate too, like that album is so good. I've probably listened to this album 20, 25 times already.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely going to listen to it again. It might be my become my new first album of the morning while I'm working remotely. So thank you for telling me about it. I really appreciate that. And to
Yeah.
anyone listening to this, Hot Mulligan's album, "You'll Be Fine." Absolutely check it out. I think you'll really enjoy it. Leo Quinn, who's going to be on the show, I did an interview with him earlier this week. I turned him on to it. He really enjoyed it also.
Word of mouth is great, and like I must say, like uh, especially like smaller bands, but not just the bands too. Like obviously, I'd say like this is a good time to support kind of bands who really make their money off touring. Um,
Oh yeah,
and I don't know if there's a way, and maybe we could put it in the notes later. I don't know, but like I also really like kind of concerns, and like our heart goes out to all the people who aren't just the people in the bands, but like the tour managers, the guitar techs,
roadies,
the
the
tour
drivers.
managers,
Yeah,
the people that work at box offices, like everyone involved in the touring industry, because when there's no shows, there's no income coming in. So at least trying to support bands in ways the best you can is cool.
yeah,
And hopefully maybe it'll be a cool side effect of like when these bands don't come around, maybe everyone will jack up the venue size. Maybe, well,
exactly.
but then it hurts the smaller venues. You can't win.
I know. I know. Well, they could do the warm up show at the small venue and then sell at the big show because people. I feel people will be so excited to go to a show again. And when my band's shows get rescheduled, I know I'm gonna just appreciate every moment of being on that stage, and
I've
just
taken for granted going to things. I can tell you that's what I'm learning.
yeah, I agree. I agree, dude. When this is over, and hopefully it's over sooner rather than later, if we all kind of like grow up, not you and me, but if we all kind of collectively grow up and do what we have to do to really stomp this thing out quickly,
Mhm.
hopefully, I feel like there's going to be some great shows and really enthusiastic crowds in our near future, Paul.
Oh, absolutely. I'm excited. But I do think I think for the most part, you're always gonna have bad kind of eggs out there. Like you hear the stories of like people throwing coronavirus parties and then some of them getting sick. But for the most part,
Right.
I'd like to think that like everyone is stepping up and being like like I know this sucks, but sitting at home is not the end of the world, and because there are so many people being hurt by this financially, but also like for doctors and nurses, everyone in the medical industry too, man, they're working nonstop. And,
Mm-hmm.
the last thing they want to be in a position is having to, for like if they run out of beds or supplies or ventilators. So like, I hope, you know, everyone's being safe for like the greater good.
Yeah, I hope so too, and I think you and I are doing our part, and I think that's a really optimistic way to wrap this up, Paul. Uh, as always, I love talking to you, even recorded, not recorded. I just love that I've got someone to be like, oh, you should check out this band. And can you
Uh,
can you have your friend? Could you give? Could you help? Could your friend help me get Kenny or Matt on the show or Mike on the show?
I can ask. Absolutely. I think I'll ask. I'll ask.
Yeah, give him my
Absolutely.
email address, give him my phone number. I would love
Uh,
to chat with any of those guys. And fingers crossed, I have some exciting. I've got a lot of irons in the fire, and so I'm really excited for this year, despite the state of the world.
yeah, you always get like really cool guests and me.
Paul, I will talk to you as long as I'm doing this podcast because you're my pop punk peer, and we're gonna recap the year in pop punk every year until I don't do this podcast anymore.
I'm ecstatic, and I'm honored that I'm the first 3-time guest. Actually really. You can probably see my face this whole time, but I've been smiling this whole time.
I have,
Um,
and real quick at the end here, I'm going to turn my
yeah.
my camera on so we can do a proper
Uh-huh.
farewell.
Oh,
Um,
hey, what's up, man?
hey man, so
I haven't shaved in weeks.
my
Just
hair
throwing it
is
in.
I needed a haircut. My hair is I'm going to have classic rock bass player hair by the time this is all over.
I feel like if you spike it up with the glasses, you got a Mark Hoppus look going on right now with that shirt, those glasses, and if you put a little gel in that hair.
Oh yeah, Hoppus is he's my template for cool male hair.
The worst part is I'm like, yeah, duh.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Paul. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me,
uh,
man.
thanks so much for having me, man, and stay safe out there. Okay.
You as well. I'll talk to you soon, Paul.
All
Stay
right.
safe.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, folks, that's our show for today. Thank you so much for listening. I always love getting to talk with Paul because he is one of my closest friends, and he's one of the few people I can really like nerd out about this kind of music with. So it was really nice to get to talk with him. If I ever got a chance to do like a podcast with Paul and Leo Quinn, who is another old friend of mine, that would be like a coming together of like my closest pop book friends. That would be pretty great someday. So that's our show for today. If you want to follow Paul, you can follow him on Instagram, the real Paul Corey, Cory, all one word. And if you enjoyed this podcast and want to share it with someone else who you think might enjoy it, we are available on Apple, Stitcher, and Spotify, and all of the other fine podcasting platforms. You can also get a month of Stitcher Premium when you sign up with the promo code AWESOME, all caps. That helps support the show. And you can get access to hundreds of hours of podcasting episodes and comedy albums from Earwolf and from Comedy Dynamics. There's a lot of great stuff to listen to on there. And I also want to give a shout out to my supporter on Patreon at the awesome producer level, Mary Beth Mooney. Thank you so much, as always, for your support. I sincerely appreciate it and hope you are doing well and staying safe. And you can go to patreon.com/awesomedisaster to check out more stuff that I've got going on over there. And this is again, as I've said a couple of times, this is a weird time, but it won't be like this forever. That's something I'm telling myself. And despite the fact that some things in my life might have to get moved around, I know that it's ultimately going to be better. And I'll be here for anybody who needs me. And I will keep doing this podcast as long as the internet still runs. So thank you guys again for being here. I appreciate that you listen because this helps me doing this show. And I will see you next time between awesome and disaster. Stay safe, everybody.